Yeah, I at least expected, though, there would be a kind of getting to know you phase with Kyle Busch and RCR.
Yeah.
But then I kind of realized like 5 seconds ago that how many crew chiefs has Kyle Busch gone through in his career? Like, he's never had problems adapting to new crew chiefs. So
That's a good point.
I don't know why I was expecting that.
Another thing that I think is worthy of being brought up with all of this, obviously last week they did a really good piece with Kyle. Tom Rinaldi did a sit-down interview with Kyle Busch as part of the pre-race for the 500, and a lot of the talk about him not wanting to take Joe Gibbs's money, and people are like, that's weird, you're weird for doing that, take the money, doesn't matter, it's whatever. Not that argument. Denny Hamlin talked about today on his podcast, Dirty Mo Media Podcast, great racing podcast, man.
I forgot my AirPods at work. I didn't get to listen to it yet. Don't spoil it.
Oh, I can't. Can I talk? I can't talk about
No,
this. This is pretty important for this.
You can talk. You can talk about it. I'm just joking.
He specifically started talking about this. How Kyle was offered a lot more money to continue at Joe Gibbs Racing and turned it down because it wasn't the amount of money that Kyle was requesting, and how if Kyle did get what he wanted from JGR, team wouldn't have been able to survive. It would have went bankrupt. Blah 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 blah. All these reasons, and they're completely valid reasons why Kyle couldn't get paid what Kyle wanted to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's getting lost in the shuffle of all of this is the fact that what I want to be paid at one company might be different than what I'm okay with being paid at another company. And sure, I'm sure the opportunities and the options, they started drying out for Kyle. I'm sure that happened, right? I mean, SHR at one point, Eric Almirola was going to be gone, so that ride probably got floated to him. You have to obviously JGR made a play. I'm sure somewhere else along the line, someone else made a play for him. But was Kyle Busch happy at Joe Gibbs Racing? And everyone says, well, that's a crazy question to ask. Why would we ask that? It's best one of the top 2-3 teams on the grid every week. It's blah blah blah. All these reasons for why he should be happy. But we've seen Toyota and their development system get weird at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's some uneasiness with that. Maybe it just, sometimes things grow stale. Sometimes you want a new challenge. And sometimes you just don't like the people that are around you anymore. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that just gets lost in this whole Kyle Busch saga that we saw play out in the last year.
Yeah.
And it needs to be talked about more. And again, it doesn't mean that Kyle Busch hates Joe Gibbs and hates JGR and hated his crew and his crew chief and blah, and hated all these people, because it's very obvious he didn't.
Hmm.
But part of being a human being is continuing to grow yourself and realize that maybe these aren't the people that I need to be around at this part of my life. And that could have contributed to why he wanted X amount of dollars here and was okay with taking Y amount of dollars there.
Yeah.
Just food for thought.
I like what you're saying about it getting stale, because that's kind of what I've thought too, is that when you look at the last 3 years, Kyle hasn't been the same Kyle Busch also.
Yeah.
Like I think it's 1 win a year for the last 3 years. I mean, last year basically lucked into the dirt race, or the Bristol dirt race. But you can also look at it too, is that if you're Kyle Busch, I hate to have to use this word, very alpha personality, right? And if you compare it to Joe Gibbs Racing, how they're set up, Denny Hamlin's the same way, Martin Truex is the same way, and Ty Gibbs is going to draw a lot of the attention, not to mention all of the guys they have driving for them in Xfinity. You go over to RCR, guess what? He's top dog. It's him and Austin Dillon, and he and Austin Dillon have a very symbiotic relationship, it already seems like. So
that was kind of another thing that I wanted to point out too, is like, we don't know what was in those contracts. We don't know. I mean, there could be bonus incentives, blah blah, as far as the money thing goes, but also like the power that he has with his race team. Like what say does he have? What is like, we don't know what's written into those contracts and what makes being paid less worth it. Only Kyle and only Kyle and Richard know that.
Yeah.
And people, as far as like, things getting stale, I 100% agree. People lose sight of the fact that like sports teams and athletes, like, you're showing up to work. You're going to work. If you go to work, if you show up to your office job and you're not happy every day, you're going to want to leave. I mean, there's culture. Every team has a different culture. I mean, you can kind of understand what the culture at JGR is. You understand what the culture at RCR. You know, it could be any number of things like under that delineation that kind of like explains why Kyle wanted to move. A lot of people always say like RCR is like a racer shop. That's a racer's team. Kyle Busch, believe it or not, guys, is a racer. I don't know if y'all know that. I don't know if y'all know, like, as far as like mentality wise, not just like he drives race cars, but like mentality wise, like he is a racer. RCR is a team of people who want to go racing, just like I always say, Junior Motorsports is. Whereas Joe Gibbs maybe treats itself more like a sports team. You know, you see that kind of influence on Denny Hamlin, you know, potentially Ty Gibbs, like that kind of thing going on. It's no different than going to work and wanting your culture to be the way you want it to be, and if it's not, you find something else. It's no different. I think people lose sight of that.
Yeah, I know we're only 2 races into it, but you know what this reminds me a lot of, Joe? It reminds me of Tom Brady leaving the Patriots.
Does it really?
Because, well, I mean, there's some because you look at how buttoned up. Sorry to lose you here for a little bit, Davey. But you look at how buttoned up and how tight everything with the Patriots was, right? And Brady had his last couple of years. Everybody thought he wasn't doing too hot, and you could look at all the success he and Belichick had together, and he needed a new, surroundings. The Patriots offered him a lot of money, but the Buccaneers offered him a whole lot more. And then he went down to Tampa and kind of cut loose like we're seeing Kyle doing. And Tom Brady looked better in like 2 of his last 3 years than he did the couple years before that.
I want to go back to the culture thing too. That's a really good point. And it feeds into that culture because, you know, Davey, you brought up the point that Joe Gibbs racing, at least outside, right? Yeah. It's obviously all outside looking in thing. This isn't an inside looking out. More buttoned up, more like a sports franchise, sports team, whatever. For Kyle Busch, that was probably the best thing for him when he joined JGR in 2008.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
He outgrew it.
And now he's got a family. He's got a successful truck team. Now it's like, okay, now I need to find a place that more aligns with that aspect of my life. Or wants something that aligns with that aspect of his life. You know, people joked about the whole Brexton Busch thing with Richard Childress at his press conference and all that, but that's still something. You know what I mean? Like, Richard Childress Racing is a family operation. You know, we all know people that work there, and we've heard the stories about how that's a family deal there, more than a lot of other teams. You know, they're located a lot further away from all the other race teams. They're in their own little area and just all of those things. So I, again, just can't lose sight of the fact that, you know, maybe Kyle just wanted to change, and that's okay. You know, but also it's fun to laugh at Joe Gibbs Racing because they had a lot of success. That's natural, right? We don't want to see the same team on top of the podium every week. No one wants that unless you're a fan of that team. At that point, come on, have some fun. Let someone else have some fun sometimes.